The founder of the hashtag Shout Your Abortion campaign has gone into hiding after people put her personal information on the internet and she started to fear for her life. Amelia Bonow is the woman who wanted to take away the stigma associated with abortion after Congress voted to defund Planned Parenthood. Now, her original Facebook post said the following: "Like a year ago, I had an abortion at the Planned Parenthood on Madison Avenue, and I remember this experience with a nearly inexpressible level of gratitude." She also said that the narrative of those working to defund Planned Parenthood relies on the assumption that abortion is still something to be whispered about. So she not only wanted to defend Planned Parenthood, but she also, again, wanted to take away the stigma associated with getting an abortion. And unfortunately, that didn't speak well to people who consider themselves pro-life, because as soon as they heard about it, they thought that they would practice their pro-life ideology by threatening her life. Okay, so they posted her address, her home address, on the internet, and as a result, she had to go into hiding. Now, I want to give you guys an example of some of the threats that she got. One person on Twitter wrote, "If happiness is the standard, then it might make many people happy if Amelia had her head crushed too." Okay. So she also got a call from David Hale, who's the Vice President of Development at Planned Parenthood of the Great Northwest and the Hawaiian Islands, expressing concern for her safety. So they actually helped her get in touch with authorities, and they also helped her. They didn't give her a place to stay, but they basically told her, "We're worried about you. We want to give you the resources necessary to go into hiding until we feel like the situation is safe." And that's an understandable thing for them to want to do, because there have been numerous Planned Parenthoods throughout the country that have been firebombed. There have been cases where those working at the clinics have been shot and killed. So I don't think that it's outlandish to think that her life would actually be in danger.
Yeah, I was following the hashtag. I thought Lindy West started this, but I guess she didn't. She's just been really active in it.
She reposted.
She reposted a lot of stuff, and she got into it with a lot of her followers. And I'm on their side. I think I like the intent of it. I don't think Twitter is the place to take this argument, and I think that it ran a course that was inevitable and easily foreseeable. And while I couldn't be more on their side, you end up, anytime you enter into an attempt to have a serious topic where there's heat where you know the heat on the other side, it minimizes the sympathy to me, that you get when they do what you knew they were going to do. Like, because I think now, posting of the information, and now she's got to flee. It's hideous. It's horrible. And anybody who posted her information should hang their head. Anybody who get into the argument on the other side is foolish. And there are people who are well-meaning who think it's murder. They're not all crazy.
They're not all crazy. And those who are reasonable, logical people who happen to be religious and they consider themselves pro-life, I'm not having a conversation with them.
Right.
I'm having a conversation about, in my opinion, the vast majority of anti-abortion activists who will say they're pro-life and then in the same sentence talk about killing people who are in favor of reproductive rights.
Look,
right? Like those are the most hideous people in this country, people who actually carry out acts of violence against those who are trying to protect reproductive rights in this country.
Dr. Tiller was murdered by a pro-life activist.
Yeah, pro-life activist. Get the fuck out of here with your pro-life bullshit, okay? It's so disingenuous. Here's what it's all about, okay? For politicians, it's all about exploiting a situation like this to gain political brownie points among their very religious, very conservative base. For right-wingers in the country, it's about controlling women's sexual activity. They fucking hate it. They hate that women have access to contraceptives so they don't have to pay the consequences of having sex. They hate the fact that women can get an abortion if they get pregnant and it's unwanted. They hate that. They hate that women can take charge of their own lives. They think back to the good old days when they had complete control, complete dominance over women, and they yearn for those days. Those people are pathetic, sick, weak pieces of shit. They're fucking idiots. And I have no respect for them. They're not actually pro-life. The reasonable religious people who do believe it's life at the moment of conception, I think you're wrong, but I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about the people who carry out these acts of violence. Sorry, I got a little emotional there.
I don't really disagree with anything you said. I hate to see conversations like this happen on Twitter. I thought, I hope this is all there is, and I hope, but I got legitimately, I don't know any of these people, but I follow many of these people who had the shout your abortion hashtag, and I was worried. I was like, because I don't know how many of these people were just in. This is not a place for serious. Occasionally, Twitter accidentally has a serious conversation, right? A back and forth.
Like the Arab Spring, for instance.
Right.
Like Twitter can be used for real political movements. There's no question
about
that.
But I just mean, like, I'm talking about America, too, when we just go back and forth. And there's so much anger and vitriol, and when you hashtag shout your abortion, that was going to happen. There's going to be an argument now against me that, like, that's not their fault, that there's that. But I know people who are anti-abortion who would never have gotten into the back and forth here, but if you think that that's a living being, then you have a right to be against abortion. And so, because that's a serious conversation, I did not think that Twitter was the place for this, and I worried whether it would undermine the work. And as you know, we've had this conversation. We had this conversation before. We both thought that people needed to stand up for Planned Parenthood, especially because Planned Parenthood reacted very poorly in the initial days after that. So people needed to take a stand with Planned Parenthood. And maybe this is the right way. It didn't feel like it to me just because I knew it would devolve into ugliness where everyone would get lumped together as being equally strident.
Yeah.
When I don't think they're not equally strident. Only one side posted the address of someone with the obvious implication being, hey, if you live nearby, go make her life miserable, whatever that may mean.
Threaten her life.
Threatened her life.
That's what it is.
I saw Lindy's life was threatened.
It's disgusting. I mean,
consistently, and she got into it and reposted, and then she seemed to get frustrated. I don't know what her actual feelings were. It's Twitter. But yeah, people were vicious. Go die, deserve to die, deserve to die. Woman after one guy posting, one guy whose whole Twitter page was about how he was a grandfather of 5 beautiful girls. That was his thing. And then every woman who tweeted "shout your abortion" was something. I'm paraphrasing. Was something along the lines of, "How dare you do that to the man who was the father? You deserve to be shot in the head, kicked, locked up, buried alive." Just one hideous thing after another.
And here's the thing with that guy. Not only is he extremely hypocritical about his own stance on life, but he thinks about this issue in terms of his own bubble, his own context, his own experiences, right? How can you do this to the guy? How could you do this to the man? You don't know her story. You don't know what relationship she has with the guy who impregnated her. You don't know anything about these women's lives. You don't know whether they've been the victim of rape, whether they've been the victim of incest, whether that pregnancy put their own lives in jeopardy. And maybe they don't fall in any of those categories. But regardless of that, it's not for you to decide what a woman does with her body. You have 5 beautiful grandchildren? That's great. No one's going to go in and take your grandchildren away from you or murder your grandchildren. So you live your life and you worry about yourself and let women make decisions for themselves. It's that simple.